and destroying their IDs to hide what countries they're coming from. Maybe they're hiding it because they want asylum here. Maybe they're hiding it for a criminal past. Who knows? But evidently they were destroying all their ID and denying evidently who they were. So these said people are taking longer to process. So if this is why these places are so full and the do-gooders are saying, it's not right, we should be getting them out, there's children in there for too long. Well,
I don't know. When you say do-gooders, you mean decent people, right?
Well, no, I think we're all decent.
The children sleeping on the floor.
For racism, isn't it? We've over-exhausted that word.
No, well, I certainly haven't over-exhausted that word, Gary. I don't think we use that word enough, mate. I don't know if you phoned the wrong show by accident.
I've got children now that are in their 20s, and I don't feel that they've gone through their school life worrying about sitting next to an Indian or a West Indian.
I'm very glad to hear it, but we're talking about ID cards today.
Yeah, ID cards there. Going back to the ID cards in general, where's the money and the costing going to come from that? If we're already spending so much money keeping these XYZ people in hotels or in these centres, and the process is taking long to get them through the processes now, to get them, whether they're going to get their asylum or not, where's the funding and the time?
But these cards,
the problem.
Right? But I mean, we could say that about anything, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could.
Why are we having an old age? Where are we going to get the money? Where are we going to get the money for the old age pensions if we're spending all that money on keeping asylum seekers in hotels? Where are we going to get money for child benefit if we're spending all that
money? Extensive money.
It's almost as if the money being spent on housing asylum seekers in, pretty grim conditions for many. It's almost as if that to you is the single most important thing happening in the world at the moment.
No, it's surely not, honestly.
Why are you talking about it then? Why have you brought it into a conversation about ID cards?
Because it's going to cost money to set up. It's going to cost.
But why are you talking about the accommodation costs for asylum seekers instead of, I don't know, Trident?
Well, at the end of the day, we're talking about ID cards for these said people and for other people having.
No, but the ID cards are for everybody. So I'm just interested in why you're talking about the accommodation.
I've got an ID card. I've got a driving licence. I've got a British passport.
No, but you'd need to get one of these as well. That would be the meaning of when I read out earlier that it would involve forcing everyone to apply for registration.
Myself, I don't feel like it's going to advance my life, and as someone said earlier on, if it's another...
No, I just wanted to let me steer you back, if I can, to why you're talking about the accommodation costs for asylum seekers instead of, I don't know, inheritance tax or corporation tax or all the other areas of public expenditure or other areas where a government could raise money. Why have you brought that into it? If it's not, as I suggested...
I've been listening to you for the last couple of days pointing on these points and saying about how it's not right and it's, inhumane and stuff like that. But it is. But at the same time, these people are coming over it, aren't they?
Yes, but we're having a conversation about ID cards. So what you're saying is that you're ringing in about topics that we did... you say the last couple of days. It's only Tuesday. So we'll say yesterday. So you're ringing in about a topic...
I thought they were sort of tied in together, to be honest.
But they're not, are they? We keep establishing that. It's just that you think the accommodation costs for asylum seekers are the most important thing in the world, and I don't understand why.
It's not just the cost, is it? It's the way that, as you said, it's the way that they're being left to live, being rammed into places. Well, to be honest,
now you sound like one of those do-gooders. You sound like one of those do-gooders now, Gary.
Well, there is that in there. Everyone, as you said, there's people in Parliament that use words like terrorism that you keep going on and on and on about and making it clear because it wasn't
people in Parliament. It was the anti.
Want to hear their opinions,
Gary, mate. It was the anti-terror police that used the word terrorism to describe the firebomber in Dover.
So no one's allowed to make a mistake in times of error.
No? You're talking about the terrorist?
Not allowed to make a mistake. But
you're talking about the terrorist now as someone who made a mistake.
Out into dry, won't you? And go on and on and on. But if anyone rings in to pick up, you put the phone down on them.
But you're here now. I love having people like you on the show. I'm not putting the phone down on you.
All you do is you shout, scream, you make your voice.
I'm not shouting or screaming. I'm not putting the phone down.
Of telling the country of how you believe Parliament should run. And then anyone that has a different view, you don't want to listen to it.
What am I doing now?
So you only listen to it because I brought it up, haven't I? You clearly put the phone down on someone 2 days ago who's listening because he was touching down and saying that he didn't agree with...
It was Sunday 2 days ago. I wasn't here.
or Monday, whatever it would have been. Either. The point I'm trying to say is,
What? No, in a sentence. What is?
I'm 43 years old. I have no racist opinions towards anybody.
In a sentence, what is the point you rang in to make? Do you think, mate?
Yeah, the point I was saying is it's a waste of money to make these ID cards as a compulsory thing. I don't feel like it's going to be money well spent in that area. I don't see what it's going to do.
That's good. Do you feel listened to now?
It's not about being listened to, is it? It was my opinion to your opinion. Now you're getting really sort of backtracking on it, and you're quite boisterous, and that's because
what have I backtracked on?
The power of the country. It's like mainstream media. We get told what we want to hear. You're telling us what you want us to hear.
Yes. And are you not telling me what you want me to hear then?
No, I'm not.
Well, what are you telling me then?
I'm literally phoning in because my opinion, I feel.
Yes.
The British taxpayer pays into a system like my grandfather has and your grandfather and everyone else has paid into this system to carry on and to have things like the NHS and have things to fund this country, which is all broken. And we can all go back and say it's this, that and the other and COVID.
I don't know what you're talking about anymore, Gary.
Here, but the fact of the matter is the country's upside down, isn't it? So why are we bringing in new systems? Where is it going to generate money to have an ID card for everybody?
I don't know anymore quite what to say to you. Is that bad?
Well, it's not bad. No, it's just quite one-sided all the time, isn't it?
But how can it be one-sided? I can barely get a word in edgeways, Gary.
Well, there you go.
Were you hoping that I'd cut you off when you started defending the terrorist in Dover?
I'm not hoping no one. I'm not hoping no one cut me off. At the end of the day, I phoned in to give my opinion.
And I was interested in hearing your opinion about ID cards. And you started talking about the accommodation costs for asylum seekers, which has nothing to do with ID cards.
Money, did I? Said it's costing a considerable amount of money to house it.
I think you just said you didn't mention money. You said it's costing a considerable amount of money.
Yeah, but I didn't mention figures of money, did I? I wouldn't actually have. I'm not that educated to know how much daily it's costing to have these places running. I didn't know.
No one said you mentioned figures. What? Can I ask you a question? If you promise not to bite my head off.
I won't bite your head off. I haven't done. I don't feel I've done all the way through.
I think you might have done, but we can disagree about that in a friendly.
Okay.
What are you so cross about? Just in the context of this radio programme.
To be honest, I'm not cross about a lot of things.
No, but I'm asking about the things you are cross about.
Because we waste so much money in England on things like immigration and stuff like that, and we have systems that set up, and people refuse to do it.
If I showed you the evidence that migration into this country is a net contributor, that it actually brings in more money than it costs, what would you say to that? Do you think?
I'd be quite surprised, kindly surprised, to be honest.
Okay. Would you take my word for it?
If there was gospel facts,
have you ever Googled it?
Yes, I would take your word for it. I wouldn't take your word for it as an opinion, but if there was facts behind your opinion, then sure, of course I would.
Good. Well, then I've got some good news for you. It's really easy to find.
Okay, so what are you going to be looking at?
Final question again. What are you so cross about? Because I feel that you came on as my enemy, and I want you to. I want to part as friends.
I like your station. I like the things that you pick up on. It's great to hear other people's views on things, but I do feel sometimes when some of you call the phone in, you cut them short because of your view on it.
I don't.
Your personal view on it, I believe, is quite strongly, which is quite powerful because mainstream media.
Yeah, don't say mainstream media. What does mainstream media?
We make our decisions on.
Yeah. What do you think mainstream media is?
To be honest, I think mainstream media is 90% lies.
Yeah.
We don't have the freedom of the newspapers anymore because they got shut down, didn't they?
What got shut down, mate?
Over the years, we had different kinds of media out there, didn't we? Different newspapers and stuff that evidently have disappeared off the shelf.
All right, I'm not
going to go into that. We're not, but at the end of the day...
would you mind going into that, just briefly, like an example of something that you feel has been shut down, media-wise?
I feel like just freedom, as you said earlier on, the freedom of speech, the freedom of newspaper speech, the people that report on things are controlled of what they report and what they don't report.
But I was talking about the kind of right-wing media that persuades people that immigration is a massive problem that costs a lot of money and that we spend too much on accommodating asylum seekers. I was complaining about the media that you believe.
All I see and hear is what I hear and see on the radio and you see on social media, don't you? And gentleman that phoned in the other day on your show I believe it was Monday, I'm not 100%, and he said how much it was cost. I can't remember, it was millions or something a day, he was saying.
I don't know. I feel we've strayed from the central point, but I hope you'll keep listening, and I hope you realise now that...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I'll
good.
definitely keep listening. Like I said,
can we agree, I'm 5 minutes late for the break, can we agree that I haven't cut you off, do you think, if I go to the break now?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. I'll be interested to see what you say afterwards. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, Gary, take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
It is 11:54 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Back to the ID cards question, which has gone off in some interesting directions, certainly in the course of the last hour. There are two elements to this conversation. Would having ID cards in any way assuage public discontent about immigration in general or so-called illegal immigration in particular? And independently of that, if you can separate the two questions from each other, what do you think about the idea of a compulsory ID card? And that question of voter ID is quite, it's quite live, that. I think that is pretty grim. 6 specific IDs that the government will accept when you are voting, of which precisely none are aimed at younger people who are less likely to have things like passports and driving licenses than older citizens. I find that very odd indeed. We may talk about it a little more later this week. Andy's in Woking to steer us back to the conversation in hand. Andy, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. Thanks so much indeed for taking my call.
Right, I'm cutting you off. That's enough. That's enough of that nonsense. Right, sorry, mate. Carry on.
The good old ID card debate. Listen, James, just by way of an introduction, I served 25 years in the Army, and like all armed forces personnel, we carried an ID card. Okay. Now, when I was serving in Germany during the Cold War, it got me backwards and forwards to the UK and pretty much all over the world on my ID card. And when I come out of the forces and this debate raised itself again about should we have compulsory ID, 20 years ago,
that's right,
it was possible a very scary thing to have because we've been subject to so much stuff. Now, we carry not only a passport if we have it or a driving license if we have it, but the most important form of ID that everybody identifies with pretty much is a smartphone.
Oh, blimey.
Now, most information you carry about yourself is on that smartphone. So why are people scared about having an ID card which would regulate their right to exist in a society where they are fed up with paying for everybody else who doesn't have a smart card or a smartphone?
I mean, some of the early objections would be the same as they were for the COVID ID pass, that people who don't have smartphones would be horribly discriminated against. And they're valid objections up to a point, but you can have one or the other. You can have it on your phone and you can have a plastic version in your pocket as well. I mean, we haven't heard the fear, actually, that you refer to, particularly, which was, again, prevalent during the coronavirus crisis, when people were convinced that the government wanted to control them or track them or kind of suppress them for undisclosed but terribly sinister reasons. They're going to be cross about these ID cards, and you're reminding them that they're already carrying biometric data that is off the scale from what we grew up with, completely off the chart.
Exactly, and I think a large portion of the attitude during COVID was our own stubbornness. Nobody likes being told what to do. But at the end of the day, I don't know what the percentage is, you'll know the figures, but most of the people in the country have now had COVID injections of one form or another.
Yeah, that's it.
And we still continue to complain, even after all of that, about COVID and all the rest of the carry-on. But the main thing that your last caller, Gary, was complaining about is the cost.
I think that's true.
You know, the cost of you know better than I what the cost of the hoteling all these refugees. Well, they're not refugees, are they? They're immigrants coming across the channel.
Well, they're asylum seekers until their application is processed, and if they're not, if their applications aren't valid, then they, I suppose, become, I don't know what they become, illegal immigrant or failed asylum seekers. But no, they are.
If they're registered in this country, they're no longer illegal, are they?
No, exactly. If they're asylum seekers,
a form of ID that they can present to any future employee or to the NHS or wherever they go.
I see all of that, and I think I agree with you. But I know that my civil liberties fans will be disappointed in me.
Switch your phone off.
But I will. I can't do that, can I? Because it's got all my ID on it. How will I be able to prove who I am if I've turned my phone off? You see, you're genius. How did that work out for you? But what about the second bit of it? What about Stephen Kinnock's idea that it would dial down people's concerns about immigration in general or illegal immigration in particular? Because if you're running a sweatshop in Woking full of trafficked workers who've got no right to be here. What difference is an ID card for people who are allowed to be here going to make to your business model or your plans?
Well, it would make it considerably easier if in the event that the government actually caught up with monitoring this on an active basis rather than just a paperwork exercise, then if they walked up to somebody and says, right, where's your ID card? They couldn't. If they haven't got it, then they have a right to take them away. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to some friends of mine who work out in Germany. I lived out in Germany for 20 odd years, and they were saying the biggest problem with immigrants in Germany is that despite how old they look, if they tell you they are only 16, you have to detain them as a child until you can prove otherwise.
But don't they have ID cards in Germany?
No, the Germans do. What I'm saying is the immigrants coming in that are wandering around Germany loosely and coming in across the border illegally. So the police are capturing these guys or taking these people and saying, who are you? And they say, oh, my name's so-and-so, whatever, and I'm 16 years old. Despite the fact that he looks older than I do and I'm in my 60s, they still have to treat them as a child until they're proven otherwise.
I'm going to file that under hearsay. I'm not going to argue with you, but I
can tell you for the fact offline. I'll actually tell you the name of the police officer.
Well, I don't need the name of the. There's a woman on Twitter yesterday whose cousin saw an asylum seeker and a newsagent spending £100 of government money on scratch cards, mate. I'm sure she can provide her cousin's name as well, but it still gets filed under hearsay. And also, of course, it wasn't long ago that Angela Merkel invited 1 million Syrians to come into Germany, and they've managed to both process and document all of that relatively painlessly. But hey-ho, horses for courses. I've gone to talk about Twitter next, but my attention is drawn to this story about voter ID, and my apologies to everyone waiting to talk about ID cards. I've got to start recalibrating my approach to old topics. I've got this slightly negative view. Oh, that's been around since... Some phone-in presenters do the same topics every day, and they seem to get on okay, don't they? So maybe I've got to stop being so dismissive and negative about stuff that we did 20 years ago on the grounds that it's all come round again. That was really, really fascinating, and at times a tad surreal, I think we could probably all agree. It's 4 minutes after 12. I am going to talk about Twitter. We are going to talk about Twitter next and the ongoing shenanigans on that social media platform. I make you a little solemn pledge. I will endeavour to conduct the conversation in a way that remains scintillating and fascinating and compelling, even if you're not remotely interested in Twitter or indeed unclear about precisely what it is. That is why they pay me the silly money. But keep an eye on this story about voter ID. I mean, you may not have noticed the Elections Act being passed back in April. It means that now voters will have to show ID or be turned away for the very first time. And this is a bizarre response to an almost non-existent problem. There was some evidence, wasn't there? There was voter fraud, I think, in Tower Hamlets, and maybe one or two other examples elsewhere in the country. But the idea that people routinely turn up at the polling centre, polling booth, and cast votes that they're not entitled to cast is just not true. It's a response to a non-existent problem. And it may well turn out to have ramifications that are profoundly negative. You can use passports and driving licences, to be clear, but if you haven't got a passport or a driving licence and you are young, I don't know what you're going to do. There's 6 separate ID that you can use if you're older, if you're over 60 or over 66. In Scotland, if you're aged between 16 and 22, you're going to be okay. But for everybody else, I find this quite chilling, actually. I mean, chilling in a way more than the conversation we just had about ID cards, which I used to find chilling, but I thought the last caller was brilliant. We used to have these conversations about ID cards when we carried next to nothing around with us that identified ourselves. You think of the technology involved in the COVID pass on your phone. You just produce a QR, didn't you? And they'd check and it proved that you were vaccinated. The idea that we're not already carrying ID cards unless you've made very, very conscious and quite complicated decisions. It's just, I thought that last call changed the nature of the whole debate, actually, and made me a lot more relaxed about the idea. I'm not relaxed about this. 2 million people, Julian Suffolk tells me, 2 million adults don't have a passport or a driver's licence. And now, if you're not over 60 with a pass to prove it, you don't have a vote. I think we'll get stuck into this tomorrow and find out a little more about it. Very, very outwardly concerning. And the Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle, who worked on the legislation at committee stage, has said that young people will be discriminated against by the policy. That's a big worry, that. But I want to talk next about Twitter. I don't know quite what we're going to talk about. I presume you're familiar with the ongoing shenanigans. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, or he was when he bought Twitter, made a great song and dance about how he wanted it to be more politically neutral. And yesterday he took to Twitter to tell everyone to vote Republican in the American midterms, which is a little odd, a little, I would say, possibly dissonant or disingenuous. And he has now banned people, lots of people with blue ticks, changed their name but not their handle. How much explaining do you think I have to do? How much technical explaining do you think? I mean, I don't want to work on the premise that you know exactly what I'm doing. So you know if you sign on to a chat room or something like that, you put in your email address, but you also have a name. So I might be james@lbc.co.uk, but then what you'll see on my post is Big Jim or something like that, yeah? Big Bad Jimbo. Or so you can't change your email address on Twitter, your Twitter address, your so I would be at Mr. James OB, but the name you see on my tweets might be Big Jim or Dirty Gertie from number 30. And you can change that quite easily. You can edit that in your profile whenever you feel like it. So a lot of people with blue ticks changed their online name, but not their Twitter handle. They changed their online name to Elon Musk. And it was quite funny. It was at first, quite distracting because you didn't realise it was someone and you'd think, oh my God, has he posted? And then you realise that lots of quite famous people, including an American comedian called, I think, Kathy Griffin, who has 2 million followers, they all changed their name to Elon Musk. So you could tell at a glance that it wasn't Elon Musk because you still had your Keith or at James or at Doris. You still had your address, but your online name was changed to Elon Musk. So he started closing down the accounts of people who changed their name to Elon Musk. And almost personally, I mean, I don't imagine he actually pressed the button, but he must have just picked up the phone. It's all gone a bit Bond villain, in my opinion. And that generally doesn't end well. He must have just picked up the phone and said, anyone pretending to be Elon Musk, even though it's fairly easy to work out that they're not actually Elon Musk because their name on their will not be Elon Musk. He is at Elon Musk. Will now have their accounts closed. This is the free speech guy. This is the free speech guy who said he wanted Twitter to be politically neutral, closing down comedians' accounts for taking the mickey out of him and telling everyone to vote Republican. And remember that in America at the moment, a vote for the Republicans is a vote for Donald Trump's lies about the last election, which is kind of unnerving because some people believe that freedom of speech is actually the same as freedom to lie, that unsubstantiated opinions should be afforded the same weight as evidence-based assertions or facts, as we sometimes call them. I think his logic for the vote Republican is there's a Democrat president. So by that, if whenever there's a Democrat president, you should you should have a Republican Senate, and whenever there's a Republican president, you should have a Democrat Senate, which even the most cursory understanding of American history will tell you means that nothing will ever get done. So it's either a boneheaded or a somewhat sinister analysis of American politics from a man who insisted that he wanted to be Twitter to be neutral politically, but bought it and told everyone to vote Republican. Phew. And also insisted he was doing it to increase freedom of speech, but is now shutting down accounts for teasing him. I don't know if you could say impersonating, really. It is really easy to work out whether an account is real or not. You know, I'm sure there's half a dozen James O'Briens out. I mean, there's lots of people called James O'Brien who are called James O'Brien. I don't have James O'Brien as my Twitter name, as my Twitter handle. Someone else got there first. But if someone's pretending to be me, I would suggest that anyone with a functioning brain would need about 6 seconds to establish that it wasn't actually me. And so it seems to me to be an incredibly thin-skinned response from the freedom of speech broski himself, Mr. Elon Musk. Have I lost you now, if you're not bothered about Twitter? Have I already lost you? Have I already broken my solemn pledge to make this scintillating and compelling for people who aren't particularly Twitter-friendly? I just invented a word. People who aren't particularly Twitterate. Yeah? Like Twitter literate? Twitterate? Come on, that's good. I think it is. So, lots of people are leaving Twitter. Lots of people are very worried. My view, weirdly, is that I'm going to sit tight and wait and see what happens. But lots of people I respect and admire are already migrating. They're already leaving the platform. Two simple things that are raised in Hugo Rifkin's characteristically brilliant column in the Times today. Apparently the use of the N-word, and you don't need me to tell you what the N-word is, the use of the N-word increased exponentially immediately after his purchase went through. I think Hugo wrote that it had gone up by 500%. And one of the first phrases to trend under the new ownership was the Jews, which Hugo Rifkin, with beautiful understatement, says that generally for the uninitiated, that's never a good sign. So those are perhaps reasons why people are already packing up and moving on out. I've got so much on there, though, for me. I don't know whether this is just laziness on my part. I haven't yet been exposed to anything more disgusting than what I'm exposed to on a regular basis. But if the general mood changes, where do you go? You know, someone told me yesterday I've got 273 million views on TikTok. Did you know that? But you can't go, TikTok's no good. Some people are going to Mastodon. I'm a bit worried about TikTok because it's owned by the Chinese government. And also I can't post clever things, can I? It's all video on TikTok, I think. God knows you get enough of me on those viral clips. The last thing you want is me recording myself saying stuff that I used to write on Twitter. So some people are going to a platform called Mastodon. Don't ring me with the details. Don't ring me with the kind of pedantic stuff about Mastodon. I don't know enough about it. I'm interested solely in what we think is happening to Twitter. Is Twitter crumbling? It's all gone a bit Liz Truss, is my considered opinion on this. He wanted it so badly, well, except he didn't, but he had to buy it, and then he got it, and it just seems to be a bit of a mess. But what does that mean in the great scheme of things? Are you going to knock it on the head? What's going on? But don't forget, some people listening to this will not know much about any of this. However, it is a big deal. It's a huge, what do you call it? It's a huge democratic tool now. Politicians make announcements on there. Journalists conduct their business on there. All sorts of things happen on there that have in large part been for the public good. Is it under threat? Is Twitter doomed? There you go. We got there in the end. Thanks to Mark, he's the only one who's asked. Is James okay? That's twice now. He's gasped and the mic has cut out and then he reappears sounding absolutely fine. Tickly throat, Mark. Seriously, you try talking uninterrupted for 3 hours a day. That's why I've had to start taking calls. So my throat can't cope with the constant monologues. Sometimes I have a slurp of tea. So there's the question. Is what's going on with Twitter? I don't have a specific one. Is it doomed is a bit simplistic. What do you make of it all? I don't know what's going on. Listen, if you don't know, I'm on there all the time. Got 1 million followers, which I was really proud of until I discovered it doesn't mean anything. You don't even get a badge. I've got 1 million followers. I've got a blue tick, which I think I'm going to have to start paying for soon. Why would I pay? Yada, 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 yada. Just let's talk Twitter. 0345 6060 973. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 19 minutes after 12, a couple of thoughts. This is from a comedian called Andrew Nadeau, who says, everything happening on Twitter right now is a lot easier to understand if you've ever had a younger sibling that invented a game and added a new rule every time they started losing. I would just say it was older siblings in my house. It was me that used to do that to my sister, I think, rather than the other way around. Oh, no, you can't do that. Is it in Friends as well? Does Ross do it with Monica in Friends? Is that like you invoke a new rule when you're... I forget. So that made me chuckle. And on a much more serious note, a journalist called Casey Newton has tweeted that the whole thing could soon be behind a paywall. That all of that would be a prelude to the biggest change of all, charging most or all users a subscription fee to use Twitter. Both Musk and Sachs, that's David Sachs, who's one of his sort of honchos, have discussed the idea in recent meetings. According to a person familiar with the matter, one such plan might allow everyone to use Twitter for a limited amount of time each month, but require a subscription to continue browsing. So I want to know what you think is going on and what you think will happen with regard to this gargantuan, this absolute behemoth of a social media platform. And I can tell you that if you hit the numbers now, you will get through. Okay, 0345 6060 973. Phil's in Liverpool. Phil, what do you reckon?
Good afternoon, James.
Hello, mate.
Joe, I'm a big softie for Twitter. I met my wife on Twitter. We've been married for 10 years now. We met on Twitter despite the fact, she was in South Africa.
Yeah.
I was in Liverpool.
I was writing a football article on Twitter. She read the article. We got chatting, slid into her DMs for everybody old enough to know that phrase.
That's still a bit sleazy, isn't it? I know you weren't being sleazy, but it's, as phrases go, it's up there, isn't it?
But so 10 years of marriage now, so I've always got a bit of a soft spot for Twitter. But you know what? I don't necessarily agree with what Elon is doing.
No.
But at the same time, I don't feel like it's any different to what we've seen for decades before. I was watching a Dynasties documentary about the Murdoch empire on BBC the other day.
Yeah.
And Rupert Murdoch has done the exact same thing with his news publications. He will change with the person that's going to be best for him. And if the Republican Party have the best interest of Elon Musk at heart, then he's going to use the platform that he spent billions of dollars for to push that message. And I understand.
Yeah, but that's a reason to be terrified, not a reason to be relaxed about it. Because Twitter is.
Listen, I'm not relaxed. What I'm saying is, if we're almost expecting him to hold higher standards because it's social media, but social media isn't owned by the public. So it's never going to be truly neutral when it's owned by an entity or an organization or an individual.
I think it was pretty close to truly neutral before. And I was always intrigued when the freedom of speech lot started going on about it, and everyone started getting excited when he bought it because they thought, banning Donald Trump was he banned for inciting the coup or for lying about the election result, or a combination of both? That didn't strike me.
Mixture of both, I think.
It didn't strike me that either of those things were a particular infringement of free speech. No one should lie about an election result, but the actual bloke who lost would be at the very top of the list of people who shouldn't lie about an election result. And it seems to me on the list of things you shouldn't be able to do on any platform or in any public space, trying to start a coup would be in the top 3 for most people. So what were the things that things that people said were being repressed, or the things that people said were being censored? I was never entirely clear on what that sort of stuff was.
Oh no, I don't think that was even the argument. I think that's the argument that people have attached to it after the event.
Okay.
I think the argument was that Twitter wasn't making a profit. It's now been bought out by an organization that wants to turn it into a profit. But he's just spent billions of dollars on a platform that reaches hundreds of millions of people. To think he wasn't going to use that as a stage to push his own agenda was rather naive, in my opinion.
Oh, I did. Yeah, maybe. I think to say he wanted it to be politically neutral and then to come out a week later and say vote X, I don't think it's naive to be a bit shocked by that, is it? Or is it? Maybe it is.
I think in the 80s and 90s, the Sun said that it was politically neutral and cited the fact that at one point it was backing the Tories and then it backed Tony Blair and then he went to back Cameron. So was that politically neutral, or was it just that they were swaying towards the direction of the owner?
But it wasn't. No, listen, before this week, I never got told by the owner of Twitter how to vote.
True.
Admittedly, I'm not American, so I still haven't been told by the owner of Twitter how to vote. But that's pedantry. So that is. The reason why right-wing media have such a problem with it, or had such a problem with it, was precisely because it was an antidote to all their bought and paid for politics. It was precisely because people could build up a big following and a big platform without having to bend the knee to the vested interests or to the owners of the empire. Whereas now, I don't know that that's going to be true anymore.
No, I don't think it is true anymore. I think it's going to go a very similar way to LinkedIn, in as much as you'll have a free access to the network with limited features, and everybody else that wants the tick or advanced features or to be able to use private messages or whatever will have to pay a fee for the site. I think he is going to use this as his platform to push his agenda. And
could it all fail? Could it all go? Could it end like Liz Truss's premiership? Because it started quite similarly.
It certainly can. I think the challenge becomes when you look at how much money the likes of Facebook have made off getting involved in political things and being very targeted about what you put in front of select people to influence votes. It actually made them a lot of money. So actually, whilst it's annoying a lot of people, this could actually end up being very profitable for Twitter as well.
It is being reported that he's just pulled the plug while we've been talking, although I don't think it was a consequence of your contribution, Phil. I'm sure he's as delighted as we are to learn about how you and your wife met on the platform. It's just been reported that he has now pulled the plug temporarily, postponed that subscription service, which I think launched yesterday, didn't it? The monthly cost of $7.99 in order to have a to have a blue tick. I don't know whether I'm coming or going. 25 minutes after 12 is the time. What do you make of it all? That's all. I know it's a very vague question. It's a very broad question. But have you left? Tell me why. A few texts coming in. Already closed and deleted. Twitter says, Muskie, oh, the relief. I no longer spend hours a day staring at my phone and reacting to racists, bigots and acrimony. I grant you, mate, if you're not getting paid for it, it can be quite a soul-destroying practice, I imagine. Reference Twitter, I've walked away. Mr. Musk is making a mockery of the platform, but you don't tell me why. And then just a quick text on the last topic we touched on at the top of this hour. I'll be 61 next week, James. I don't have a passport or a driving licence. I don't get my over 60s travel pass for use in London. Unless I get some ID, I will be disenfranchised. This will not stop me going along and insisting on voting because I've been registered at the same address for 30 years. I think this story is going to grow, actually. I think this may be a fairly epic miscalculation. Is Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter also a fairly epic miscalculation, or can you see sense in what many of us find confusing? Andy's in Hull. Andy, what would you like to say?
Well, the TLDR is Twitter's finished.
That means too long, don't read.
Yeah.
I like that. It was only about a month ago. I worked out what that means. So you honestly think it's finished?
Well, you've got to look at it from the variety of several sectors. So the first of is advertisers.
Yes.
Do they see it as a stable platform? No. There's been a recent rise in a lot of people joining who are on the more far right of things.
How do you know? How do we know that?
I've seen a few Twitter accounts who keep a watch on these kind of things.
Yeah.
I've seen an explosion of a lot of the kind of racist metaphors are coming up.
Yes.
Which is obviously going to, it's like the adpocalypse we had on YouTube, where all of a sudden every advertiser went, we don't want anything near that.
But it's early days. They could get rid of that. And I mean, if he is focused on the bottom line, then he will understand the importance of getting rid of the stuff that will put off the advertisers. I know his early response was to sort of attack the advertisers and to say he was going to name and shame them, but he'd be like King Canute, wouldn't he, if he did that? So the what do they call it? The commercial imperative probably demands that they clamp down on that kind of thing. No, for the reasons that you cite.
You would think so.
Yeah.
But when you look at Musk's instability lately as well, where he's flip-flopping every second, and the other day where he posted an image of a Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually it was an image of pigeons.
Yes, well,
but I don't know if he even knew it was
on the back of a Nazi.
Yeah, but didn't you need to have some sort of facility for recognising uniforms to know it was a Nazi? He didn't have a swastika on his.
It was a Gettysburg. What is it? Gettysburg image.
Getty Images.
Which actually says on it that it's a Nazi.
All right, but it was a joke about inboxes and the days when people relied upon pigeons to... I mean, there was nothing in it that could be construed as being pro-Nazi, although it was obviously an unfortunate choice of photograph because it featured a Nazi. Oh, boy, this conversation's already gone off on one, hasn't it?
I know.
Carry on.
And when you consider also the investors are going to see him... With any business or investors, you expect stability and growth.
Yes.
And at the moment, they're seeing him do one policy on the fly on Twitter, and then the next day go back.
Yeah.
Go and fire all the employees, and they go, I need them back now.
This is true. A lot of the people he fired are needed to bring in a lot of the things he wants to bring in, so people are being asked to come back to jobs that they were fired from last week. That's got a touch of... We've gone from Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak now, haven't we?
Yeah. And when you've got that kind of instability in a business... and they've just put, a couple of £1 billion in, they're going to want to see the return rather than go from almost the MySpace where it's been bought for a stupid amount of money and they've got to sell it at pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, but he's not... I mean, my only quibble with what you're saying, and I think you've thought about it more than I have, my only quibble is that if you're right, then he won't do it for the reasons that you cite. There you go, it's even a poem.
You would say that, but
I did.
If you look at his business history...
Yes, tell me more,
especially
briefly.
Things like his solar power or his...
he does mess things up, doesn't he? Yeah.
His solar power pretty much was always making a loss. Starlink is most likely going to make a loss if it wasn't for the government propping it up.
Yeah.
He was promising everyone would get this, 1 cent.
Yeah, but these
brick.
are complicated. Again, you know more about it than I do. These are complicated commercial enterprises, whereas your analysis is quite straightforward. If he does this, that will happen, and therefore, if you're right, he can stop doing it. It's not like running a satellite scheme or a solar-powered empire, is it?
Yeah. But this is a complicated thing. I mean, think of how complicated things like Facebook and Twitter are in terms of the infrastructure, the staffing, the code behind, how it interacts.
So you're really going for the absolutely epic mistake.
Yes.
Okay, and you've been very persuasive. Actually, I hope you're wrong for entirely selfish reasons. Because I really like Twitter. I don't want it to buckle under the weight of the owner's ambitions. And equally, I don't want it to turn into even more of a cesspit than it is already. Seriously, if I block any more people, I'll probably get a medal. 12:31 is the time. Tim Humphrey is here with your headlines. 12:35 is the time. All right, allow me to indulge in a little bit of the sort of simplism that I normally lampoon other people for engaging in. The reason why I value Twitter, even if I wasn't on it, is because the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph hate it. They never stop moaning about it. It's right up there with the tofu-eating wokerati. So it must be doing something good. Even if you encounter a lot of racists on there, even if Donald Trump used it to spread all sorts of nonsenses culminating in behaviour that even Twitter wasn't prepared to countenance anymore. You look at right-wing media in this country alone, and they absolutely hate it. They're always writing about, it's not real life. They hate it because it allows an alternative to be broadcast on a big scale. What's the point of trying to control the information that reaches the people by having almost every newspaper in the country owned by non-domiciled oligarchs? And of course, when they worried that newspapers were going out of fashion, they started a couple of TV stations as well. I mean, why are they so frightened of Twitter? Why do they hate Twitter so much? Answer, because it offers an alternative to their very, very carefully curated and entirely self-serving agenda. So that's why I worry that Elon Musk, by buying it and automatically encouraging people to vote for the Republican Party in America at this point in history, means it's just going to become another platform controlled by somebody. Well, you can fill in the gaps yourself. The number you need is 0345606973. I like this from Tom Giddon, who seems to know of what he speaks. Tech-wise, Twitter isn't a big deal. Mastodon shows it's easy to replicate. The value in Twitter is the user base and inertia. If trust is undermined by Musk's antics, and those are damaged, there's very little to recover. Rob's in Enfield. Rob, what do you reckon?
Hey, hi, thanks.
Hey, hi, ho.
Letting me get through to you, and thanks for you save my sanity every day. Thanks so much.
A lovely thing to say. Thank you.
The whole thing about people impersonating Elon, I find it hysterical.
Yeah.
It reminds me of. I used to work in the design department at Lego years ago.
Oh, cool.
And one day we used to do our work through Skype. We would all have Skype handles and we would all discuss projects and stuff. And one day people started switching their Skype handles to be the same name as the manager. And at some point, the entire Skype list was the manager, like 200 people. And it was total chaos because nobody knew what was going on or what the actual projects were. Obviously, you could, in the same way that you can see that's not Elon. I find this whole people impersonating him, and literally just about what you were just talking about before I came on, it's people impersonating Elon they're kind of taking back the power from one of the people who's possibly the most powerful person alive at the moment.
Yeah.
And I find that really fantastic.
Well, I mean, it was funny and hilarious until he started shutting their accounts down.
Yeah, but then to your point about if he shuts it down, he loses the trust and the entire thing collapses. And people are so fickle about... I just, obviously, I'm no expert in any of it.
I don't know if anyone is.
I would think that people could just be, okay, we're done with this now. And it's gone.
I'm surprised by how many people are saying that. I haven't noticed it myself. I only breached 1 million followers quite recently, so I was watching to see if I dip below it again because so many people are closing their accounts or moving away. But I've seen people announcing that they're leaving, but I don't know that they've closed their accounts. What do you think is going to happen? Because I think everyone's dancing around the same issue here, and it is as if his personal conduct dilutes trust, damages trust so much that it becomes commercially relevant. We're pretty close to that point already.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because I have a love-hate relationship with Elon, because I think on the one hand the space and all of that kind of stuff that he does, I completely admire him for that, and I think he's like our live version of Iron Man in that way.
Yeah,
but then
fair enough.
Also, he's a bit dodgy too.
Yes.
So because obviously we're all people and we've all got our own personal problems, he kind of, because he's in such a public space, you kind of see that a lot more, and you see the dark side of him, and that's a bit kind of
Yeah, I mean, dodgy and dark are quite big words. And I don't know much about the fella, to be honest, which is a mistake on my part, clearly. But I'm surprised by how thin-skinned he is. I'm surprised that he's essentially shut down people who were laughing at him, completely shut them down, having claimed that he was buying it in order to extend free speech. And I'm even more surprised that in April he was saying that one of his main reasons for buying it was to enforce political neutrality, which I thought was already there. And then within a heartbeat, he's telling people how to vote in a nationwide election.
Yeah.
We shall watch with interest, Rob, and see what unfolds, I think. Are you not leaving it yet yourself?
I'm not even on that.
Are you not?
No.
Well, get off my radio show then. Outrageous. So, no, I mean, the question of whether or not people are going to walk away. A few people are citing the ghost of Gerald Ratner. He's still alive, by the way, but obviously his immolation, his self-destruction of his own company after describing one of its items, one of its products in the most negative of terms. I don't, but he's not done anything by accident, has he, Elon Musk? Everything he's done so far has been on purpose. 12:41 is the time. Thank you, Rob. Liz is in Peterborough. Liz, what would you like to say?
Hiya, James.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good. What's on your mind?
Twitter. I love Twitter.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Twitter. But over probably about the last 5 or 6 years, we have a huge cancer community on Twitter. Oh. Cancer Twitter is a big thing.
I didn't know that.
And because of, you get people who come and say, has this happened to you? I'm on this drug. Has this happened to you? We get the support all over.
Gosh.
I mean, I'm actually a childhood cancer survivor, so I've had so much of my help and support through Twitter. And my worry is, over the last few days, obviously with what's happening, people are starting to talk about, okay, I need to leave, I'm going to go to a different one, I'll go to Mastodon or wherever. And it's sort of, what happens, this support structure that we have built up so well, if Twitter crumbles because everyone's lost faith in what Elon's doing.
What reasons are they giving for moving on, though?
Just because for some people it's the political side of it, especially, I guess, in America.
Yeah,
the political side of it is so big that they want nothing to do with it. But it's just that, there is so much support on there for people, and there's huge support networks that. But I don't.
Listen. I completely share your reservations, and maybe I'm being a bit unfair when I push you on the question of what they're actually objecting to, because I'm on there quite a lot, and I think I'm more exposed to the bilious corners of Twitter than many people are. As a relatively high-profile anti-racist, I tend to draw attention from a lot of racists and Islamophobes and all of that, and I haven't really picked up yet on an uptick in that kind of behaviour. What is it that people? It
hasn't happened yet,
right.
But there's people saying, "Oh, where do we go now? How do we find it?" And if it carries, I'm worried about if it carries on, and people will say, "Oh, well, I don't want anything to do with it if he's doing this or he's doing that." And it's just that concern about where does it go in the future? Like you were talking earlier about the subscription service that. Obviously that's not going ahead yet.
But that would help. If it all went behind a paywall, that would help, because people are unlikely to pay to spit.
Absolutely. However, people sometimes don't have the money to pay for what at the moment is kind of a free support service across the world. And there is so much, and it's just that thing of, I love Twitter. I love how it is. I found the nurse who looked after me as a cancer patient, age 14, through Twitter.
Oh gosh.
It was amazing. But so I really love the place, but I just don't want it to get ruined by all of this, and it does concern me.
Well, I'm optimistic at this point, although this is probably one of those interventions that's going to come back and haunt me. I'm optimistic because I can't imagine him. Well, maybe this is naive. I can't imagine him sticking on a path of self-destruction, even if he's accidentally stumbled onto that path of self-destruction. If the advertisers stay away because they're worried about the toxicity of contributions increasing, then he's going to have to do what they used to do and take measures to get rid of the toxic contributions. I mean, it is that simple, isn't it? And
that's my hope as well, is that he's going to not ruin what potentially is a massively huge golden egg he has.
I don't know how he's ever going to make much money out of it. That's the other side. But then again, he's one of the only people on the planet that can afford to buy it without worrying too much about making...
he doesn't need to make money, does he? That's the difference. When money's taken out of the equation, it changes things dramatically. But,
we shall see.
Really
I like that.
I love Twitter.
It's an important point you remind us of. For those of us who just use it essentially to flex our egos, as if a 3-hour radio show every day wasn't enough to indulge my ridiculously overdeveloped ego. Liz reminds us that it serves a real and important purpose for many people, particularly in that case in the cancer community. I mean, how else do you make contact with people? You're a world without social media. You might just track down someone you were at school with in 1983, but it could be someone who nursed you when you were a cancer patient at the age of 14. I don't know. I haven't found the focus on this. I haven't found the detail. I haven't found the laser way into it. And I'm beginning to think perhaps there isn't one. Nobody knows yet what's going on. Nobody can be sure. There's been some odd wobbles. There's been some flip-flops. There's been some incredibly thin-skinned behaviour from the new owner. But what the road is going to be a month from now or a year from now may have very little to do with what it was like today or a month ago. 12:45 is the time. It is 12:49 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where I think I don't normally or don't always do this, but if we were to try to extrapolate any broad conclusions from this conversation, it would be my old geography teacher. Don't know, don't need to know, nobody knows. No one's got a clue. Some of what Elon Musk has done since he bought Twitter is very worrying. Some of it is very hard to understand. Some of it is outwardly quite hypocritical. But none of that means that he will continue doing it or that this time next week it would have made a particularly large impact on how the platform operates. So why are so many people leaving? 034560 60973 is the number you need. 10 to 1 is the time. Connor is in Leicester. Connor, what do you reckon?
Hi.
Hello.
One of these phrases that Elon Musk is using is, I don't know if you've seen it, but he keeps saying he's going to democratize news, right? I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah.
And essentially what that means is at the minute, you have like your blue check mark on Twitter, right? So someone goes on to Twitter, they see the blue check mark and they know it's you, right? Because it's very hard for...
They know it's me. They don't know that everything I say is going to be correct or evidence-based. There's plenty of people with blue ticks who are absolute horror shows.
Sure, but
it is me.
Yeah, but if it becomes easy to buy these, $8 check marks, well, Elon Musk himself has experienced how easy it is for someone to go on, say, make an account with a handle like an app that's very close to yours, change the name to yours, then buy this $8 check mark, and then start saying whatever, and then those can be screenshotted and spread around.
Yeah, but isn't that what he's acted oddly through his own thin-skinnedness? That's what he's acted to close down. So unless it clearly says parody, then you'll be closed down. Unless it only applies to him, but I think that's unlikely.
Well, at the minute it only applies to him, but it only takes like one screenshot, right, to act to like.
But that happens already, mate. That happens already. I've got people doing that all the time.
What, with check marks?
Yeah, dude, making a fake of my account and tweet and pretending that I've written something that I haven't written. To be honest, they're bottom feeders, so I don't bother with it. And I can't quite. And I know this is a bit privileged of me because I've got 1 million followers and a blue tick. But even someone with a blue tick can make a fake tweet about pretending that it's me. And it's just, it's water off a duck's back. It's just evidence of how tragic they are, really. I don't know what I'm supposed to be frightened of because all you've got to do to check whether it's me is go to my own profile and see if it's there.
I guess, the main thing, though, is like this democratization of the news where he seems to want to make it so that he seems to think that every opinion should be treated, completely equally, and then maybe a bit hypocritically. Sometimes
that worries me.
Agrees more with.
Yeah.
So it's more like now you can go to Twitter and you can at least go to at least the worst conspiracy theories are taken down, right? Like the anti-vaccination stuff. I think the voter fraud stuff was taken down.
Yeah, it was. Or it would be given a something added to it, wouldn't it? Like a warning would be stuck on it if it was dangerous, as in encouraging people to take hazardous life decisions and that kind of thing. Whereas you think he sees it as being, and he's hinted at this, hasn't he? That he thinks that all opinions are equal almost.
Yeah, and I think one of the big issues with him is because he's such a big free speech advocate, or apparently free speech advocate. How long does it take before someone is misled or someone's radicalized via Twitter, and it's found out that his, policing and policies of the news on the site forces governments to intervene if it becomes too much of a vector for radicalization, right?
How do we know this about him? Because I've seen some of the stuff you refer to, and I know that, the democratizing and that fear that I do share, that he is going to be one of those people, or that he is one of those people that thinks that opinions are equal. I always think of Brexit at this point and having to interview Andrea Leadsom alongside the former Director General of the World Trade Organization about what the World Trade Organization was, and that ludicrous notion that she was an equal and opposite authority to him, because he said Twitter needs to become by far the most accurate source of information about the world. That's our mission. I was briefly encouraged by that, because I thought, well, you can't be the most accurate source of information about the world if you think that the man who thinks the moon is made of cheese is an equal and opposite counter to, I don't know, Neil Armstrong.
But one of the issues with that is he said that very close to after he was, retweeting those stories about Nancy Pelosi's husband, right?
Yeah, no, well, that is actually terrifying. So for people who don't know, he suggested that it was worth considering the possibility that Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked by a rent boy that he'd hired himself. I mean, just the biggest load of Trumpian nonsense. And he tweeted that himself and then deleted it and never really addressed the problem.
So I think one of the issues is when he says accurate, I think that kind of translates into way you've talked about reality has a sort of bias against of what this political wing might think.
Yeah.
When he says accurate, I think what he actually means is he wants to make it inaccurate and try and present all these factual stories as having being equal to the unfactual ones.
And certainly,
and he's just a bit sick of reality disagreeing with him.
I think, that's a beautiful way of putting it. I want to create an environment in which I never feel stupid or wrong. I mean, you can understand that, but you've really got to be a medieval monarch to pull it off, or Vladimir Putin. Because he's right, isn't he? Connor's right. The people who seemed to be happiest about his purchase, certainly in the early days, were the people who thought that their unsubstantiated opinions and even blatant lies were going to be afforded more, quotes, freedom, end quotes. So how does that tally with his professed mission to become the most accurate source of information about the world? I do not know. Tim's in Muswell Hill. Maybe he does. Tim, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say I think a last caller made some good points. And just on broader sort of giving a bit of background, I'm a big fan of your show and Twitter. One of the main reasons for doing so in a crazy world at the moment, it's nice to have a grounding that actually talks a bit of truth.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the thing that's driven Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter. I think partly what your last caller was saying, in so much as he is actually sort of I'm trying to put this in words that won't get you banned on the radio, but he's
careful,
not feeling good about it, and is a bit touchy himself, and so that's part of it.
Why do you think he bought it?
But I think he bought it to deliberately scupper the ship.
It's a lot of money to spend on deliberately scuppering a ship.
But not his money.
Well, a lot of it is his money. I think he's borrowed 13 billion out of 44.
Yeah, and a lot of that billion apparently came from a Qatari investment authority. And the one thing, and I thought they're
going to invest. They're not going to have done it to scupper it. They're going to have done it to make more money out of it, aren't they?
You would think so, but I think they are rich enough and powerful enough that they worry more about their loss of power. And the problem with Twitter is it has an ability to speak truth to power in a way that Elon Musk's ego doesn't like, and people like Qatar don't like as well.
I see why you're linking those two together. So that idea again to create Twitter is an appalling window that lets the light into a carefully constructed universe in which no one's allowed to criticise you or mock you or I mean, in the case of Qatar, to point out your appalling human rights abuses or your homophobic legislation. And if you can shut down the platform, then you can pretend that the criticism doesn't exist.
Control the narrative, and that's exactly what a lot of billionaires have put a lot of money into, controlling that narrative, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I share your fears, although I don't feel them in quite the same way, because the nature of Twitter is so different from... So what do you think he's going to do with someone like me, for example? You only do that not because I'm painfully self-referential, but because you knitted the show and Twitter together at the beginning of your call.
Well, if Elon Musk starts making offers for LBC, I might get worried.
Yeah. So might I.
I mean, I
You'll
think
be all right, Phil.
I think
That's not what I meant.
Something possibly there, and I think that's a theory that I held beforehand, and nothing that he has done since taking ownership has allayed those fears. In fact, they've added to them. I couldn't think of what he would have done worse since taking over.
That's a good way of putting it.
Would have had a more dramatic impact.
From the Pelosi tweet through to the shutting down of accounts, through to the charging. There's an awful lot there to be worried about. And Julie, with the last word on this, reminds us people are in prison in the Middle East for tweets that they sent. Thank you, Tim. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player. What a lovely treat that is. You'll also find on Global Player all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as the world's biggest podcasts. So do download Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Swarbrick will be with you at 4, but now it's Sheila Fogarty. 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 Now